Ink wasn't even dry when the horse snapped the rope and dragged him across the yard. He had just signed everything away, every acre, every memory, yet something in the animal's eyes refused to let him leave. Dust rose as his boots scraped the ground, his hands clawing for balance. It wasn't panic, it was insistence, and it was pulling him toward a place he had sealed shut years ago. The paper lay flat on the weathered wooden table, its edges barely stirring in the morning air. Eli's name, written in steady strokes, stared back at him like something final. Too clean, too certain for a life that had never been either. The man across from him had already gathered his folder, offering a polite nod that felt rehearsed, distant. It was done. Eli didn't stand right away. His fingers lingered near the pen, as if the weight of it still belonged in his hand. For a moment he expected something. Relief, maybe, or even regret, loud enough to stop him. But what came instead was quieter. A hollow space, stretching further than the fields beyond the porch. "Take your time clearing out," the man said gently, though his tone carried no real attachment to the place. To him, it was land. Numbers, potential. Eli gave a short nod, but said nothing. Words felt unnecessary now. When the truck engine faded into the distance, the silence that followed was heavier than any noise. It settled into the boards beneath his boots, into the worn beams of the house, into the spaces where laughter used to live. He stepped outside. The morning light was soft, almost kind, brushing across the fences and the dry grass as if nothing had changed. But Eli felt it immediately. The shift. This land no longer answered to him. The air itself seemed unfamiliar. Copper stood near the fence, head lowered, unmoving. The old horse had been part of this place longer than most memories Eli allowed himself to keep. Time had slowed the animal's movements, softened its once powerful frame, but there was still something steady in the way it watched the world. Eli walked toward him, slower than usual. Not cautious, just unsure. "You're still here," he muttered, more to fill the quiet than to say anything meaningful. Copper lifted his head slightly. The movement was small, but it felt deliberate. Eli reached for the rope tied loosely to the post and began to untangle it. His hands worked out of habit, muscle memory guiding motions he no longer had a reason to perform. "We'll figure something out," he said under his breath, though the words sounded thin, like they belonged to someone else. The rope slipped free. For a second, nothing happened. Then Copper shifted. It wasn't the slow, careful movement Eli was used to. It was sudden, sharp. The horse stepped back, tension running through its body in a way Eli hadn't seen in years. "Hey, easy," Eli said, tightening his grip on the rope. Copper didn't respond to the tone. His ears flicked back, his muscles coiling as if bracing against something unseen. Eli frowned. "What is it?" There was nothing out there. No noise. No movement. Just the same quiet morning, stretching across the empty land. But Copper wasn't looking at the fields. He was looking past Eli. A strange unease crept up Eli's spine. He turned slightly, following the direction of the horse's gaze. The old structures stood where they always had. Barn, fencing, the distant outline of the unused stalls. Nothing out of place, nothing new. Still, the feeling didn't leave. Eli gave the rope a small pull. "Come on, that's enough." Copper resisted, not with force, at least not yet, but there was a firmness in it, a refusal that didn't match the animal's age or temperament. Eli's jaw tightened. "Don't start this." He pulled again, sharper this time. Copper took a step forward, then stopped. Completely. The rope went taut between them. For a moment they stood like that, man and horse, caught in a quiet standoff that made no sense. Eli exhaled slowly, irritation beginning to replace confusion. "You don't get to fight me today," he muttered. He stepped closer, intending to guide the horse manually, to reassert the simple control that had always been there. But as he reached out, Copper moved again. This time not away, not forward, but sideways, blocking Eli's path. It wasn't panic. It wasn't fear. It felt intentional. Eli froze. The thought came uninvited. He's not trying to get away. A faint sound drifted through the air, nothing more than a loose board somewhere shifting in the distance. The kind of noise a place like this made all the time. Yet it pulled at something in Eli's chest, something he couldn't quite name. He shook it off quickly. "Enough," he said, firmer now. He tugged the rope again, expecting resistance, expecting the same quiet refusal. Instead, Copper surged forward, not away from Eli, but past him. The rope burned against Eli's palm as his body lurched forward, boots scraping hard across the packed dirt. Copper didn't slow. The sudden force pulled Eli off balance, dragging him several steps before he managed to plant his heel deep enough to resist. "Stop!" His voice broke into the empty air, swallowed by the same silence that had settled over the land all morning. But Copper kept moving. Not wildly, not out of control. There was direction in it, an urgency that didn't belong to panic. Eli felt it in the rhythm of the pull, in the way the horse angled his body, choosing a path instead of fleeing blindly. "Easy, easy," Eli tried again, though the words came tighter now. The yard blurred past in uneven motion. Fence posts, a rusted trough, the side of the barn where the paint had long since peeled away. Eli's shoulder brushed against a wooden beam as he stumbled, catching himself just enough to stay upright. Then he saw where they were headed, the far end of the property. "No." The word came out low, immediate. "No, not there." Copper didn't hesitate. Eli dug his boots in harder this time, leaning back with everything he had left. The rope strained between them, cutting into his grip. For a second, just a second, the forward motion slowed. Hope flickered. Then it snapped. Copper surged again, stronger, as if whatever drove him forward had nothing to do with strength at all. Eli lost his footing. His knee hit the ground first, sending a dull shock up his leg. Dirt filled his hands as he tried to catch himself, but the pull didn't stop. He was dragged another foot, then another, before he finally twisted the rope just enough to force a break in the motion. "Enough!" he shouted, breath unsteady. This time Copper stopped. The stillness that followed was abrupt, almost unnatural. Eli stayed where he was for a moment, one knee pressed into the ground, chest rising and falling too fast. The rope hung between them, no longer taut, but not loose either. It felt waiting. Slowly, Eli lifted his head. They were standing in front of it, the old stall. Time had not been kind to this part of the property. The wood was darker here, weathered in a way that spoke of neglect rather than age. The roofline dipped slightly, and one corner of the structure leaned inward as if it had been slowly giving up for years. The door remained closed. It always had. Eli pushed himself to his feet, brushing dirt from his hands without really looking. His gaze stayed fixed on the door, on the way the sunlight didn't quite reach it the same way it touched everything else. "You've got no reason to be here," he muttered, though he wasn't sure if he was speaking to the horse or to himself. Copper didn't move. Eli glanced at him. The old horse stood square, steady, his attention locked forward, not on Eli, not on the yard, but on the door, watching. The unease returned, heavier now. Eli turned away, forcing a short breath through his nose. "Done here," he said, sharper than before. "Come on." He gave the rope a firm pull. Copper didn't follow. Eli pulled again. Nothing. Frustration flared, quick and familiar. "Don't do this!" he snapped, stepping closer to the horse, trying to guide him by the halter instead. Copper shifted, not away, into Eli's path, blocking him. Eli stopped short. The movement wasn't aggressive. There was no threat in it, but it was deliberate in a way that made Eli's chest tighten. "You're acting like there's something here," Eli said, quieter now. The words hung in the air. Something. A faint creak echoed from the structure. Just wood settling, nothing more. The kind of sound Eli had heard 1,000 times over the years. But this time it didn't feel like nothing. His eyes moved back to the door. He hadn't stood this close to it, and he didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. His hand lifted slightly, then dropped again before it got halfway. The distance between him and that piece of wood felt larger than the entire property. Behind him, the house stood quiet. Too quiet. "Eli?" Mary's voice carried across the yard, soft but clear. He turned his head just enough to see her standing near the porch, one hand resting against the railing. She looked smaller from this distance, framed by the empty space that used to feel like home. "What's going on?" she called. Eli hesitated. "Nothing," he answered too quickly. "Horse got spooked." Mary didn't move. Even from afar, he could feel her watching, waiting for something more. Eli looked back at the door, then at Copper. The horse hadn't shifted once, still watching, still waiting. Eli swallowed, the dryness in his throat sudden and sharp. "Just give me a minute," he added, not sure who he was asking. Mary nodded slowly, though her expression didn't soften. She turned back toward the house, but not fully, like she didn't trust leaving him alone with whatever this was. Eli faced the door again. The silence deepened. His hand rose once more, slower this time. It hovered near the old metal latch, fingers inches away. For a moment, everything inside him resisted. Then, his fingertips brushed the cold metal, and they started to shake. The latch gave way with a dull click that sounded louder than it should have. Eli pushed the door open slowly, the wood resisting at first before yielding with a long, tired groan. Dust hung in the air, disturbed by the movement. It drifted through the narrow beam of light that slipped inside, turning the space into something suspended, caught between then and now. Eli didn't step in right away. He stood at the threshold, one hand still on the door, as if crossing into the stall required more than just a step forward. His breath came shallow, uneven, though nothing in front of him looked dangerous. It was just a stall, empty, or at least that's what it seemed at first glance. The old boards were worn, the corners darker where time had settled in layers. A broken section of the inner wall leaned slightly inward, its edges splintered. The ground was uneven, scattered with old straw that had long since lost its color. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. And yet, Eli stepped inside. The air felt different here, heavier, not in a way that pressed down, but in a way that lingered, as if something had never quite left. His boots made a soft crunch against the dirt. Each step carried a quiet echo, not in sound, but in memory. He crouched slightly, brushing his fingers across a low beam. The wood was rough beneath his touch, familiar in a way he couldn't explain without saying too much. He pulled his hand back quickly. Behind him, Copper remained outside. The horse didn't follow, didn't shift, didn't make a sound. But Eli could feel it. The presence, steady and unblinking, like a witness that didn't need to come closer. Eli turned his head, glancing back just enough to confirm it. Still there, watching. He looked forward again. There was a mark along the inner wall, faint, almost hidden beneath years of neglect. A long scrape, uneven, like something had struck against it more than once. Eli stared at it. His chest tightened. "No," he said under his breath, the word instinctive. He stood, taking a step back as if distance might blur what he was seeing. But it didn't. The space didn't change. The mark didn't disappear. Instead, something else shifted. Not in the stall, but in him. A sound surfaced, distant at first. Not real, not present. Just remembered. A voice. Not loud, not angry. Just urgent. "Dad, don't—" Eli's eyes shut hard. The memory didn't stop. It never had. It had just been quiet, buried under years of work, of routine, of not looking too closely at anything that might bring it back. Until now. His hand moved to the side of his head, fingers pressing against his temple, as if that might steady the rush. "I didn't," he started, but the words didn't finish. Because he had. The scene came back in fragments, then in pieces that connected too quickly to ignore. The stall wasn't always empty. There had been movement here once, tension, a young horse, restless, unsteady. Eli remembered the frustration more clearly than anything else. The pressure, the weight of things already slipping out of control. He had wanted order, control, something that would listen. The memory sharpened, a rope tied too tight, a space too small, a warning he didn't take seriously enough. "Dad, please, just wait." Eli stepped back again, his heel catching slightly on the uneven ground. "I was trying to fix it," he said, the words escaping now, quiet but strained. "I was just trying to—" The sound. A sharp, sudden impact. Not loud, but final. Eli's breath caught. His eyes opened. The stall stood silent again, exactly as it was. No movement, no voice, just the faint line along the wall and the weight of everything it now held. He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "No one got hurt," he said more firmly this time, as if saying it out loud might settle something. "It wasn't—" But the words didn't sit right, because that wasn't the truth. Not entirely. He turned away from the wall, pacing once across the narrow space before stopping again. His hands moved without direction, brushing against air, against wood, against nothing that could anchor him. "You left," he muttered, the thought slipping out before he could stop it. Not to the stall. To her, his daughter. The silence that followed that realization was deeper than anything the stall could hold. Eli stood there, unmoving now, the weight no longer something he could step around. Behind him, Copper shifted slightly for the first time. Not forward, just enough to be heard. A quiet reminder. Eli turned his head. The horse hadn't changed position, but something in the stillness felt different now. Not like insistence anymore, but like acknowledgement. As if this was what he had been brought here to see. Eli looked back at the stall one last time. He stepped out. The air outside hit differently, cooler, sharper, real. He walked past Copper without touching him, moving toward the house with a pace that wasn't hurried, but wasn't steady either. There was something he needed to find, something he had avoided longer than the stall itself. Inside, the house felt smaller than he remembered, the walls closer, the silence louder. Eli moved through it without stopping, heading straight for the back room. He didn't hesitate this time. He opened the drawer, and there it was. The envelope. Unopened. Unsent. Still waiting. The paper felt thinner than he remembered. Eli held the envelope between his fingers, its edges worn soft from time, from being handled and put away, handled and put away. Never finished, never sent. The room around him seemed to shrink as he stood there, the weight of something unfinished pressing in from all sides. He slid a finger under the flap, but didn't open it. Not yet. Outside, a truck door slammed. The sound cut through the house like a line drawn across the moment. Eli froze, his eyes lifting toward the window without moving his head. They were back. Of course they were. Things like this didn't wait. He set the envelope down on the table, but his hand didn't leave it. His fingers rested there, as if letting go completely would mean something irreversible. "Eli?" Mary's voice came from the hallway this time, closer, careful. He didn't answer right away. She stepped into the doorway, her eyes moving sauberstort to his face, then to the envelope beneath his hand. She didn't ask what it was. She didn't need to. "They came back," she said softly. "Said they just need one more signature." Eli nodded once. "That's what they said this morning, too," he replied, though there was no edge in it, just acknowledgement. Mary stepped further into the room, stopping a few feet from him. There was distance in the space between them. Not physical, but something older, quieter. "You okay?" she asked. The question lingered. Eli looked down at the envelope again. "I don't think I ever was," he said, almost to himself. Mary didn't respond immediately. She watched him the way she had earlier, like she was waiting for something she wasn't sure would come. Eli picked up the envelope. This time he opened it. The paper inside unfolded with a soft crackle, the crease stiff from years of being left alone. His eyes moved across the words, his own handwriting, but from a different version of himself. It didn't start with an apology. It started with an explanation. Why he had done what he did. Why he thought it would fix things. Why he hadn't meant for it to go the way it did. Eli's jaw tightened. He read further. The sentences grew smaller, less certain. The explanations gave way to something closer to the truth, but they never quite reached it. He stopped halfway through. "That's not what happened," he said quietly. Mary shifted slightly. "What do you mean?" Eli looked up at her, then back at the page. "I wrote this like I was trying to convince her," he said. "Like if I explained it the right way, it'd make sense." He let out a breath that didn't quite steady him. But it didn't make sense. Not then. Not now. Mary didn't move. Then what happened? The question settled between them, heavier than anything else in the room. Eli folded the letter slowly, but didn't put it away. "I didn't listen," he said. The words were simple, bare, but they carried more than the pages in his hand ever had. "She told me to wait, just give it time." His eyes drifted, not to the room, but somewhere past it. "But I didn't want to wait. I wanted it fixed. Right then." Mary's expression shifted, something tightening just beneath the surface. "And when it went wrong?" she asked. Eli's grip on the letter tightened. "I told myself it wasn't my fault," he said, "that I was trying to do the right thing." He looked at her fully now. "But I knew." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It held everything. Mary took a solemn breath, her gaze dropping briefly before returning to him. There was no anger in her face. Not yet. Something quieter. Something harder to read. "Why didn't you ever say that before?" she asked. Eli didn't have an answer ready. Because there wasn't a good one. "Because once I said it out loud," he began, then stopped. Mary waited. "I couldn't take it back," he finished. Another sound came from outside, voices this time. Low, professional, patient, waiting. Eli turned his head towards the window. He could see the edge of the truck now, the movement of someone stepping out, adjusting their jacket, glancing toward the house. Everything was still within reach. One more signature, one more step. And all of this room, this letter, this conversation, could stay exactly where it had always been. Unfinished. Untouched. Eli looked down at the contract lying on the corner of the table, where he had set it earlier without thinking. The paper was clean. Official. Final in a way the letter never was. Mary followed his gaze. "You don't have to do this today," she said quietly. Eli shook his head. "It's not about today," he replied. He picked up the contract. For a moment his hands were steady again, the same hands that had signed without hesitation just hours ago. Then his eyes shifted, from the contract, to the letter, from what was easy, to what was true. Outside the footsteps grew closer. Eli stood there, both papers in his hands, the weight of each pulling in a different direction. One would let him walk away, the other wouldn't let him hide. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them, and lowered the contract, without signing it. The room didn't change when he made the decision. No sudden shift, no relief rushing in, just the quiet. Eli placed the contract back on the table, aligning it carefully with the edge as if order still mattered in a moment like this. His hand lingered there for a second, then moved away. The voices outside grew clearer, measured, patient, waiting for him to step back into the version of the day that had already been decided. He didn't move toward the door. Mary watched him, her expression unreadable now. Not distant, not close, just open, in a way that made it harder for him to look away. Eli picked up the letter again. The paper felt different this time, not because it had changed, but because he had stopped trying to make it something it wasn't. He unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the lines he had written years ago. The explanations, the careful phrasing, the quiet attempts to soften what had happened. He reached for a pen. Mary didn't ask why. She only stepped closer, just enough to be there if he needed her. Eli lowered himself into the chair, the wood creaking faintly beneath him. He stared at the blank space at the bottom of the page, where the letter had once ended. Then he began to write. The first words came slowly, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he did. I should have listened. The pen paused. Eli exhaled, then continued. You told me to wait. You told me it wasn't ready. And I didn't hear you. I thought I knew better. The lines formed without hesitation now. It wasn't an accident. Not the way I said it was. I made a choice, and I've been living with that choice ever since, without saying it out loud. His hand trembled slightly, but he didn't stop. I don't expect you to come back. I don't expect anything. But you deserved the truth a long time ago. He set the pen down. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't empty. It was full of something steady, something that didn't need to be hidden anymore. Mary rested her hand lightly on the back of his chair. That's the first honest thing you've said about it, she said quietly. Eli nodded, his eyes still on the page. I know, he replied. There were footsteps on the porch now. A knock followed, firm, polite. Mr. Carter, a voice called. We're ready whenever you are. Eli closed his eyes for a brief moment, then folded the letter with care. Not the rushed, uncertain folds from before, but something deliberate. He stood, the movement slower than usual, but certain. Mary stepped aside as he moved past her, not blocking his path, not guiding it either, just letting him choose. Eli walked to the front door and opened it. The man from earlier stood there, folder in hand, offering the same professional expression. We can finish up quickly, he said. Just a couple more signatures and... I'm not signing anything else, Eli said. The words landed calmly, without force, but they held. The man blinked, caught slightly off guard. I'm sorry? I'm not signing, Eli repeated. Not today. A pause stretched between them. The man shifted, adjusting his grip on the folder. Mr. Carter, we've already completed most of the process. Delaying now could... I understand, Eli said. And he did. Every consequence, every cost. None of it was hidden from him anymore. The man studied him for a moment, as if trying to determine whether this was hesitation or something else. Then, slowly, he nodded. All right, he said. We'll give you some time. He turned, stepping off the porch, the sound of his shoes fading across the gravel. Eli closed the door gently. Inside, the house felt different. Not lighter, not easier, but real in a way it hadn't in years. Mary stood where he had left her, her arms loosely folded. What happens now? She asked. Eli looked at the letter in his hand. I send this, he said. Mary held his gaze for a moment, then gave a small nod. Okay. There was no promise in it, no resolution, just space. Eli walked back through the house, past the rooms that held more memory than furniture, and stepped outside again. Copper stood near the fence, exactly where he had been before, waiting. Eli approached him slowly this time, not out of caution, but out of awareness. He didn't reach for the rope. He just stood beside him. For a while, neither of them moved. The wind shifted lightly through the grass, carrying the faint scent of dust and something older beneath it. Eli looked toward the far end of the property, the old stall barely visible from here, then back at the house, then at the letter in his hand. "I should have done this sooner," he said quietly. Copper didn't respond. He didn't need to. Eli let out a slow breath, something settling deep within him. Not comfort, not peace exactly, but something close enough to stand on. Land might still be lost, the future still uncertain. But for the first time in years, Eli wasn't trying to outrun what had already happened. He stood there, the letter held firmly, the weight of it no longer something to avoid, but something to carry forward. Somewhere down the road there might be an answer, or there might not. This time it didn't change what he had to do next. Eli turned toward the house, already thinking of the mailbox at the end of the road. And for the first time, he didn't hesitate. Some losses don't begin with circumstance. They begin with silence. And sometimes the hardest truth is the one we owe to the people we love most. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and stay with us for more meaningful stories about the quiet bonds between humans and horses.
If this story meant something to you, share your thoughts and follow Horse Heart Healing for more stories like this.